Good afternoon, everyone. I am Coach Hayes. I am with you tonight with Coach Hayes Hudl, coming in at you just live after the Masters coverage, where we see Roy McIlroy doing a great job out there this evening, leading by 6 strokes going into round 3 on Saturday. We got the Florida-Georgia game playing here in the background right now. The bad guys are up 1-0, but I'm sure Georgia's going to start feeding those trees soon. Looking forward to seeing what the final score is going to be of that game. But I come to you with some spring notes. It's been a great week. As a teacher, I'm off for spring break week. It's Masters week, and it's my birthday week. 52 years of age, feeling very good. It fits me well. Looking forward to sharing with you guys notes and reviews and things that I've heard on the field as Georgia prepares to take on, realistically, their second scrimmage as we get ready 1 week away from G-Day on April the 18th. We got a lot to talk about, so we're going to get right at it. Right now, as you can see, in a 3-segment process, I'm going to go with you in the coach speech segment, talking about Kirby's relentless process of things that he looks and sees, and I think his attention to detail is very important. That's something that we love and admire about our head coach as a UGA fan, and it's something that you want to continue to see because there's no stone unturned. He basically watches everything that's going on out there every day. His attention to detail is flawless, and I think that's the reason why you see the program where it's at right now and what it's doing. As we move forward, I want to talk about, the wide receiver room is probably one of the most speculated personnel groupings that Georgia's going to put on the field this year. We have very little returning, stats coming back. London Humphreys probably fits that category to the biggest contributor coming back. But we do have a lot of talent that is submerged in that personnel room, and everybody's beginning to wonder what the possibilities are in that room. What I'm going to be doing is a breakdown talking to you about Sacovie White-Helton. I think this is someone who not only has waited his turn, and he's shown that through his interviews and the things that we've heard from Coach Smart over the last couple of weeks, and of course them interviewing Sacovie. I know this kid and watched this kid's basically career through high school. He grew up and played at a high school very close to me. I've got friends and dear family people that I have actually coached with, that coached with him and coached him in school, and just know his family very well. I notice as time has gone on, the Helton family that he is with, I know he has taken on the hyphenated name of White-Helton. That family that he is with, I know them very well and used to go to church with them as well. So just know that family very, very well, and look forward to seeing what his growth is going to be this year as a football player at the University of Georgia. He has definitely waited his time out, and I am highly in favor of what he's going to be doing for the University of Georgia at that slot position this year as a wide receiver. And then lastly, we're going to hunker down with a personnel that I think is kind of underestimated this year going into the 2026 season. So we're going to talk real quick and listen to Coach Smart talk about something that I think is very important, and that is something that typically gets overlooked, not necessarily by the beat writers and by the people who go out there like the donors and watch practice, because there's so much to it. It's very busy. But to me, it's very easy to look at the people who you highlight, like your wide receivers, your running backs, your quarterbacks, because it's easy to isolate that talent because typically they're either catching the football, running the football, or have the ball in their hands. What typically is overlooked, and what I think is the most important cog to the entire mechanism, is what's happening between the trenches. So today what I'm going to focus on are 2 personnel groupings. We can talk about the tight end room, probably the most talented tight end room in the nation, if not the most talented tight end room in the nation. They've got athletes galore in that room. They can rotate 3 in, 3 out and still show no depth change whatsoever in that group. So I'm not really going to talk as much about the depth of the tight end room. I am going to hit on the offensive line, and I think it's very important we talk about the wide receiver room. So those are the things that I'm going to be talking about tonight. But there is another group that I think is underestimated. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Coach Speak with Kirby's relentless pursuit. I'm going to give you a little small detail to it after this.
Kirby, can you talk to me about your, I'll say battle, but the guys working at center, and specifically Cortez Smith? What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so we've got 5 guys getting reps at center. I think you always have to have 3. Obviously, those 5 getting them or don't include Drew, who's not practicing. So those guys are really battling it out. We haven't had perfect snaps, but we've had in the 90 percentile of accurate snaps, and that's got to be 100. So anything less than 100 is not acceptable. Cortez has done a good job, as has Malachi, as has Zykie, and Walt Clare works in there, and then Peegler works in there. So Cortez has doubled up, got some reps at guard, as has Malachi and Zykie. And, Phil, Stacy, Warren, Evan, they do a good job with those guys, getting them reps and IDing fronts and communicating. And I think Cortez is doing a good job.
Now, there is a lot of things that you can talk about when you enter into spring. I've said this before, that when you go into spring as a coach, you definitely want to see a depth chart that starts to take mold. You want to see it come to fruition because you've got an idea from the previous year what you've got coming back and the talent levels of what you've got coming back. And when you have a new set of eyes that all of a sudden has the dominant ability to go in and say, okay, this is what I want in my front five, it changes the whole perspective. That's what I mean when you talk about Coach Rosher coming in and taking over for Stacy Searles. Stacy Searles is still out there getting after it, guys. He's helping, and I love the fact that there's so many eyes. You notice Coach Smart mentioned there's 4 different guys watching that offensive line, and I think that's key because that's what's not thought about when you watch a scrimmage. You only think about, well, it broke down right there. Gunner's running outside the pocket, so obviously we don't have good pass pro right here in this situation. But we talk about running back room and what it's doing. There's big runs that are hauled off by Chauncey Bowens, by Nate Frazier, by Bo Walker, whatever it may be, Dante Dowell. And you're saying, well, the offensive line had to open up those holes for that situation as well. I really like to know what Phil Rosher's philosophy is, because when it comes down to it and you're looking at an offensive line perspective, honestly, you got to have that 50-50 concept. That's what makes, to me, the offensive line so special, is you got to have a road grader that can put his hand in the ground, get white-knuckled and get after ass and get lined down and be able to move people, but also be very cerebral, calling out mic checks, understanding X's and loops and stunts, and being able to swamp technique out and fan out to make sure you take care of a 3 technique and a 5 technique, and, take care of an X stunt when you're isolated away from the Roger and the Louis call, from what the center identifies the mic by. There are so many things that are important when it comes to offensive line philosophies. And when you have Coach Rosher coming in, I know that he wants to run the football. It's always evident every year. Coach Smart talks about the fact that running the football is the most predominant thing that you want to do. You establish the ground game. It sets up everything else around what you want to do. It helps in the play action. It also makes sure that the defense can't bring 6 and 7 man pressure, because we're going to dice you apart, because we're going to throw it over the top of you from where you come from. There's so many things that come into the cat and mouse game of when you got a team that runs the football very well. So I know Phil Rosher is talking about these guys, and they want to understand the process of, hey, we've got to be able to line down, put our hand in the ground, and move people, but we've got to be very cerebral, and we've got to be very sound and consistent in our pass pro. And that comes with the depth of what you're looking at. And there's already a couple people that's beginning to rotate around, because you've got Drew Bobo, who obviously has been hurt. He's still recovering from his ankle fracture, foot fracture. So that means Cortez Smith, Malachi Tolliver, and even Zykie, Carrollton native, is coming out there and getting those center reps right now. And I'm telling you, Cortez Smith is getting just as many reps at the ones that Malachi Tolliver is. You can see here in this picture, those are the ones coming out from underneath the chute right there. But you'll notice who's at center? Malachi Tolliver. The other guys, it's not necessarily a big shattering, earth-changing difference. You got Ernest Green, you got Dontrell Glover, you got Juan Gaston. But the other correction that you see out there that a lot of people have realized as time has gone on, obviously, Coach Rosher is a big fan of Josh Jackson. We're all a fan of Josh Jackson. We'd love to see this kid develop as large as he is. He is a lot of human, standing beside another lot of human in Juan Gaston. Can't imagine that tackle guard combo. All he's going to do is continue to improve. But what Coach Rosher's got to see, and what all coaches have got to see from the personnel groupings this spring, is they've got to see consistency. And you want to have the ability to see that consistency take place over time, because, as I said earlier, you've got this depth chart in your mind. It's on the board, okay? You go out and practice it every day. You have a nick here. Dontrell Glover goes down with a little tweak. You got, somebody that's a number 2 guard struggling with a hamstring injury, and you're trying to rotate pieces around. It's a constant, tug of war trying to figure out what the right set is, okay? But when it comes down to it, there are people that are going to be stepping up that you wasn't prepared for. There's going to be people who are maintaining and continuing that consistency that we saw from last year. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. It's going to be very important to watch 2 people specifically. It's not Josh Jackson. It's not necessarily this freshman talent we've got in White-Helton or maybe even Ekene Boko. It's going to be those guys that are going to be sophomores this year that have expectations that are a lot higher than what they were as freshmen, because we didn't know anything about these 2. Dontrell Glover didn't get to school till last July and was starting by mid-October. Juan Gaston was slated to be in the guard position day 1 and had to move out to the tackle position due to injuries. All of a sudden now, those guys became staples, freshman phenoms. And as the year went on, got better and better and better. And we saw obviously the potential they had. But all of a sudden now they're sophomores. Now their expectations are higher. We expect them to go out there and do their job. And a lot of times sometimes there's a fall off with that. It happens. I've seen it so many times where you have a kid that does a good job as a freshman. Everybody gets excited about it. And then all of a sudden they have sort of a plateau, or they actually have what I call the sophomore slump. So I'm more interested to see what Dontrell Glover and Juan Gaston do this year as I am as Josh Jackson. I think Josh Jackson, people like Zykie, people like Ekaneo Boko, probably going to do well because we have no expectations of what they can do yet. We haven't seen what they can achieve. Coach Rosher, Coach Searles, all those guys that work with those gentlemen every day understand that. Okay. But you know what? It's not a sexy position. But what I have learned as a coach over my years of coaching, when I learned and understood the philosophy an offensive line does, and understood how to coach that position, and understood the X's and O's and scheme and everything that goes in with that, that makes you a better football coach. You can sit out there all day long with skill positions, but those skill positions can't catch the football, can't throw the football, can't run the football if your offensive line isn't doing their job day in and day out on every play. That is very heavy contact. Every play, you've got to have that heavy potential every play to be leaning on somebody. So you got to understand that's why the line to me is so important for us this year as a personnel grouping. Okay. Now, what's nice to see, and this is something that I have come to conclusion with over the last couple of scrimmages that I've seen, or really one scrimmage, the second scrimmage is tomorrow. But with people that have watched and reviewed, and I've heard a lot of different feedback from different people. But without a doubt, to me, the top five that you see there in Josh Jackson, Juan Gaston, Drew Bobo, Dontrell Glover, Ernest Green, that should be your starting five day one. Should be. That's right now probably what's on paper, what you're thinking every practice you go out to, unless you got somebody that just starts showing up and showing out that really gets pissed off because they see somebody in front of them that they should be playing. Okay. Josh Jackson is sort of the question mark right now because we don't know what he's capable of doing. We know his size. We know his potential. But like I said, he hasn't put anything out there on film yet necessarily for us to see other than a couple of scrape plays from last year that I've had a chance to watch, and he's more or less 50-50. But this is something that Coach Rosser saw, something that prefaced from this past year into this year, and he wanted to give this kid a chance right out of the gate. And that's just the difference of thinking when you have Coach Searles as the head offensive line coach working with his personnel grouping and Phil Rosser coming in and changing some things up. But what's happened because of Drew Bobo being hurt, I think this is great as an offensive line coach, is that you have the opportunity to work your twos, because when you look at Malachi Tolliver, you think, well, he would be the automatic number two. But I watched Cortez Smith a lot on film last year with Malachi Tolliver, and I was highly favorable of his work on film. Okay. So I was really curious to see what they were going to do with Cortez Smith and Malachi Tolliver. Who was going to be rotating with the ones? Who was going to be rotating with the twos? I'm going to be very interested to see on G-Day on the 18th who's going to be over there with the ones. You see in that picture I just showed you on the previous screen, Malachi Tolliver's in that group one. But I know the other day in practice where I had a buddy of mine who was watching practice, Cortez Smith is starting center. So that could be the switch up that is a little bit different. And anytime you've got a guy working center, you will have them rotate out into guard positions as well. So I'm going to tell you this. If Cortez Smith is starting at center, you can look at over Drew Bobo at this point in juncture. Drew should obviously have the starting center position locked down by August into September. But if Cortez Smith is locked down the center position too, you better believe all those guys that are rotating in at center, Zykie and Malachi Tolliver, are getting guard reps as well. You typically want to have about 4 to 5 guys playing the center position because you can't have enough centers. Okay. It comes down to the fact it's not just about snapping the ball. And this is what I mean by the relentless pursuit of Coach Kirby Smart, talking about, Cortez Smith and what he's done and getting 90% of the snaps back there. But he doesn't want 90% snaps. He doesn't want any snaps that are bad. He wants 100%. He expects perfection. And who wouldn't as a coach? You do not want any errant snaps. And that's right now something that they're probably working on, having Malachi and Cortez back there, and you don't have Drew Bobo. And they're probably seeing more than less right now in spring practice. He's talking about 90% to 100%. That's something that, it's a non-negotiable. If you're going to be the starting center or going to be the first rotator in, you can't have any errant snaps. You just can't. That's got to be like breathing when it comes to the center position. But I look at the first 5, and that's what I see. Josh Jackson, Juan Gaston, Drew Bobo, Dontrell Glover, Ernest Green. I see his first rotators, Malachi Tolliver, Cortez Smith, Zykie Helton, who's been in high regard, a lot of buzz about him right now. I think he could fit the mold of what they're talking about with Dontrell Glover. He's come in and done a great job. Coach Smart has talked very highly of him. There's a lot of buzz about him right now. And again, because there's no expectations, we saw what he did in high school. We know obviously he was dealing with issues with, being under the weather and obviously having a condition to deal with the Crohn's disease and having to deal with all the loss of weight and everything. But he seems to have gained that back with no problem. I mean, if you look at this picture right here, that's Zykie Helton right there beside Coach Rosher. He's a lot of human, and he is doing a phenomenal job and impressing a lot of people right now in that group. I could see him being a rotator. Okay. Daniel Calhoun, he is to me the one person that really bothers me right now that we haven't seen any growth out of him. I think when you look at when you look at Daniel Calhoun, before the Juan Gaston talk last year, he was slated to be that starting guard for Coach Searles' group, and he got hurt and didn't get a chance to play, and never did get that chance to redeem himself at the starting guard position. But he's got to be by now a rotator, at least at the guard position. I think Michael Ewing is another one that's going to be slated in at a tackle position. That's going to be a first rotator in as well. And not to mention the other freshman phenom, Ekenea Boko. I really do think that he's going to be a high potential player. He's not necessarily going to be oohs and ahs, because right now there's not one guy you can sit there and talk about, because I'm not even talking about another guy that's been buzzed a little bit. Graham Houston out of Buford. You look at Marcus Harrison, who came in with Michael Ewing, Malachi Tolliver, and Daniel Calhoun in that recruiting class. And you look at the kid they got out of Alabama A&M, the Tyquez Richardson kid. Nobody's asked about him. I'm really curious. I wish one of the beat writers in the next presser would ask about Tyquez Richardson. How is he coming along? Some people don't want to talk about the lineman position because, again, it's just not sexy. All right. It's not something that people want to talk about. But yet, for it to be fully functional and for your team to be successful and for you to see success in what you want to see, the product on the field on any given Saturday, it has to come from a productive offensive line. So I think this is where the majority of our potential is going to be coming from. But yes, there are some outliers. When you look at Graham Houston, again, you look at Marcus Harrison, you look at Mason Short, another kid that I really like as well. And then, of course, Tyquez Richardson, along with this group right here, that could be any kind of rotation that you want to see. But I think if you put them on paper, Drew Bobo does come back from injury with no problem, and he is starting. I think you've got Ja, you've got Juan, you got Drew, you got Dontrell, and you got Ernest Green. I think that's the 5 rotational guys that you're going to see. And I think all those guys that are underneath them are going to see playing time at some point in time. Makes me feel better as we move forward, because I think it solidifies a lot of things on the offensive line. And I think that's important when it comes to the offensive line play. Okay. But what's said and done, if I'm Coach Rosher, after we have this second practice tomorrow and after we have G-Day next Saturday, I really would love to be able to go up to my board that I've got my depth chart set up on the board, and I'm looking at all my plaques up there, and I'm saying, okay, this guy right here surprised me. I'm definitely moving him from a 3 to a 2. He definitely is more, comfortable at a guard position, not the tackle position that I thought. And you're getting everything moved around, and you're getting everything put into perspective so that as you move through the summer into August, you know who your starting 5 are, okay? You know who your first rotators are. Center, both guards, both tackles, and you know who the next guy in mentality has to be if you have to do a complete rotation because one guy goes down. There's so many different playing pieces when it comes to the offensive line, and I think it's very important for us to understand that as we move forward. Guys, I appreciate you being in here with me tonight as we move into segment 2. This is Coach Hayes with Coach Hayes Hudl. I'm glad you're with me tonight. For those of you who've never seen the show before, I do breakdowns with X's and O's. I talk about all the current events going on with Georgia football. I enjoy connecting fans to the fundamentals of football. So if you enjoy my work, please make sure you hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button, get those notifications. If you do see that you're watching this at a later time and not catching my live, you'll notice there's a lot of QR codes on the screens. If you scan those QR codes, it will take you to the respective websites so that you can find all the social media outlets that I give you. And I appreciate you being with me tonight as we watch the Masters finish up for the evening, which was a great watch today. Watching my Bulldogs play the Florida Gators right now. They're still down 1-0 in the looks like the top of the 6th inning right now. It's a pitcher's duel. And right now, giving you some current events about things going on, because as we move into spring football, through the second scrimmage into G-Day, a lot of cool things happening. Would like for you to, just for a second, this actual segment was sponsored by Georgia Sports Autographs. We got a big thing happening on G-Day on April the 18th. I'll be right back after these messages. So as you can see, we've got the big reveal. Stetson Bennett, Keely Ringo, Oscar Delp, and Dan Jackson will be at the Classic Center in Athens on G-Day, April the 18th from 9:30 to 11 o'clock. You be sure to check out georgiasportsautographs.com to be able to try to purchase any tickets that allows you entry into that to get any of your classic paraphernalia signed by those four gentlemen, four actual championship, national championship alum. As you can see here, over my shoulder, back here behind me, I've got a Stetson Bennett jersey signed, something I'm actually going to end up getting framed like my Lad McConkey jersey up top. And those for you that are in the chat that might be watching tonight, I see I've got a lot of people that are watching me tonight, which is awesome. With everything going on a Friday night, I figured there would be a lot of other things going on, be watching Coach Hayes on his live show. But you can see over my other shoulder here is a Zayden Walker black signed jersey. That is going to be going out to those people for those people who are going to be contributing not only through Patreon, who are my tier 1 and tier 2 subscribers, but it also goes for super chats tonight for YouTube. So you'll notice I have a goal set tonight for 10 super chat guys. If you put in a $5 contribution to super chat, you've got no obligation other than just the $5 super chat. That gives you an entry into possibly winning the Zayden Walker jersey that you see back behind me here on this chair behind me, the Zayden Walker number 10 jersey. Was his number last year. Black jersey signed, authenticated as well. So if you're interested in that and you want to be a part of that, I would love for you to be a part of signing up with being a super chat tonight for me on the YouTube Live. Got a lot of people in here watching. I appreciate the comments. People from Facebook, people from YouTube. What's up, Coach? Hope you're doing well tonight. Thank you for checking in with me. I was talking about hey, I need to talk to you, my friend. I've got you in because you gave me the super chat right before we got off live the other night. You are entered in for the Zayden Walker jersey, and you get a double entry because of your double super chat that you gave me the other night. So I appreciate you being back with me tonight. I saw your comment there on the lineman there. In this segment, Sacovie White-Helton. This young man has really impressed me watching him on film. You don't have a lot of film on this guy. I think it's exciting to see with Zachariah Branch's absence that we're not going to fall off too far with him in there. I love his comments that he made in his presser the other day, talking about that he's not Zachariah Branch and that he's walking a different path than a lot of people do. And it's tough when you're sitting there year after year feeling like it's your turn, to be called, to get your number called, to be able to play, and you find someone all of a sudden gets brought in from the portal and he's basically playing the position that you're at. Sacovie White-Helton is a great kid, comes from a great family. Okay, high faith kid, high character kid, and is definitely one of those youngins that you want to have as a product of what you're doing in your culture of your program. And I love the way he handles himself because he realizes, hey, I've waited my turn. I've done what's right by everybody else. Team comes before me, and we're beginning to see those resulting products. So what I wanted to show you real quick, first off, is to talk to you about the wide receiver room, and we're going to move forward with a small little blurb from Coach Smart talking about Sacovie White-Helton, and then you're going to get to see what Coach Hayes Hudl is about. I'm going to be breaking down an actual play in the Sugar Bowl with Gunnar Stockton and Sacovie White-Helton and talking to you about the schematics of the actual play. So stick around for that as we move forward. When you look at all the wide receivers that are out there, London Humphreys is basically the only returning stats that you possibly have. But you hear things about Landon Roldan, Talyn Taylor, the kid that we got from Georgia Tech through the portal, Isaiah Canion, and there's Sacovie White-Helton as number 0 this year. He's not number 18 this year. There's plenty more out there. CJ Wiley, Thomas Blackshear, Tyler Williams. There's a lot of kids that we're hearing buzz about every practice. Guys, you're going to hear that for the rest of the summer. One guy showing out in a 50-50 drill, one guy showing out in a 7-on-7. But there's no doubt about it, if you really were to say, okay, I want you to line up today, I think realistically, you've got a rotation of Talyn Taylor and London Humphreys at Z. You've got Sacovie White-Helton and Jeremy Bell in the slot position, and those two are interchangeable. The Z and the H position in the twin set can be interchangeable at any given time. One can do the other, and vice versa. And then you've got the guys fighting on the backside of the X, things like Isaiah Canion coming in from Georgia Tech. We've heard good things about that over the last couple of weeks. I know he's been dealing with a little bit of injury, but again, that's the process of trying to see, hey, when he's hurt, is CJ Wiley stepping up? Because I think he's that next X factor in there, pardon the pun, that goes into that process of, is he stepping up as Isaiah Canion was hurt? Okay. So every wide receiver right now, honestly, even including London Humphreys, who is the tenured veteran, okay, who's going to be a very good possession receiver. I think he's going to be highly resourceful. He's going to be trustworthy. He's going to be a good route runner. He's going to do a lot of good things for us this year. But where we're going to see the talent come from is from one of these guys that we're not talking as much about. Because if you think about it, our tight ends are so stacked and we run so much 12 and 13 personnel that we're going to see probably only one or two of these guys in rotations at a time. Because when you got 13 personnel in, you only got one wide receiver you can have in. When you have 12 personnel in, you can only have two. So there's a lot of rotational differences when you've got people like Lawson, Luckie, who realistically is the alpha tight end of the group, most tenured, has the most experience, comes back and is going to lead that room. Okay, but you've got all that productive talent in Ethan Barbour, Elyiss Williams, Jaden Riddell, who's having an excellent spring right now. I'm hearing so many good things about him, and that's the one thing you want to hear, man, the competitive edge of seeing this kid topping out at 22 miles per hour on his GPS. Are you kidding me? Highly touted tight end brought in with the recruiting class from the year before. And to see what we've been bringing in behind that, when you've got Keys and Fogel, and you've got, of course, Caden Prothrow, who is sort of a unicorn in his own perspective as well. Believe it or not, I said this in my previous show with Scott the other day and Head on a Swivel. I honestly feel like we can line up in 14 personnel, not have one wide receiver on the field, and be just as productive. To have a two tight end set with two wide receiver set, and all four of them be actual tight ends. You know, that's how good we are in the tight end room right now. It's unbelievable. So I think that's going to be some pressure relief from the wide receiver room. I think everybody seems to think it's just like with the offensive linemen. They don't want to see that sexiness because the offensive line just, I don't want to talk about the offensive line. I've got to watch 5 or 6 guys doing something every play. I can't do all that. I can't read all of that. But, when you look at all of that come together in one piece, and you've got 12 personnel on the field. You got Talyn Taylor on one side, a CJ Wiley, Isaiah Canion on the other side. Those kind of things taking place, and you've got two tight end like an Ethan Barbour, Elyiss Williams combo, or a Lawson Luckie and a Jaden Riddell combo, and you're seeing that go out into the the progression routes and being able to throw to those guys. I think that really helps. Is a tremendous help when it comes to the receiver progression this year. And what's even beautiful about it is our receivers are pretty damn good. Unfortunately, we just haven't seen them with a lot. They just don't have a lot of plays on film. But by God, they're going to get it this year. You're going to see Thomas Blackshear. You're going to see Tyler Williams. You're going to see Landon Roldan. You're going to see Talyn Taylor. You're going to see CJ Wiley. You're going to see Sacovie White-Helton. You're going to see those guys play this year. And we're going to get a chance to evaluate that talent because they're putting consistent film on tape every week. And that's what builds the confidence in the fan, in the coaching staff, because that's what you want when it comes to it. I can have a kid go out and show out for one practice in a 50-50 drill, working on back shoulder throws and pat and go techniques, or a 7-on-7 one day. But can you do it day in and day out? That's what I've got to see. Okay? So in the wide receiver room, it's going to be very important, and it's led by those people going out and being productive and being consistent every day. And thank you again, my friend. Appreciate the super chat that puts you in for 3 now, my friend. I appreciate you contributing to the super chat today. If you are watching live right now and you want to contribute to the Coach Hayes Hudl super chats, I've got a goal tonight of 10. And for what you see over my shoulder here, I can't go to it wouldn't be over here. It's always backwards the way I'm thinking about it. The Zayden Walker jersey behind me today, you're going to be put in for a free drawing of that Zayden Walker jersey. So appreciate you being here tonight with me. So here's kind of the personnel that I wanted to talk to you about. Look at this grouping. You got London, Sacovie, Talyn, Jeremy, Isaiah, CJ, Thomas, Tyler. And then I put in Ethan Barbour and Elyiss Williams because I honestly feel like those guys play a lot of H, which is the slot position if the H position is removed. So they really can work in as well. Lawson Luckie can come out there and do that as well. Jaden Riddell can come in there and do that as well. What's so cool about watching these guys work in the 6 guys that I've shown you, realistically 4 tight ends is going to be proven, is that all of them can not only put their hand in the ground and be a true YH combo, what I call YAP personnel, and be in the run game, but then also line up as a number 2 receiver in the slot and go out on routes just like a slot receiver can, just like a number 2 receiver can. It's beautiful. and how it's constructed, being in a pro style offense, I think it's very important to understand. So when it looks at these different people, the one person that I'm seeing and somebody that I have really been excited about out of the groups of the starters, if you want to call them starters right now, I think Talyn Taylor is going to be the next person we have that has 1,000 yards receiving. I'm calling it right now. I'm going to go ahead and say it out loud that I think Talyn Taylor ends up being that 1,000-yard receiver that we have not seen since the only other one in Terrence Edwards in 2002. I think London Humphreys and I think Sacovie White-Helton are going to do a great job in possession receiving. I still think they're going to have their games, and they're going to definitely complement what we do. But I think if there's really something that stands out to me, Talyn Taylor to me is someone that's going to show up and show out in a way that everybody's going to be talking about. And by the end of week 3, we're going to be saying we've got the real deal in the receiver out there. And you know why? Because they tried to go to him last year. And guys, that drop at Alabama is just going to be a fart in the wind as time goes on, because I do truly feel that he is going to go out there and make everybody forget about that when he has his first 100-yard receiving game. I don't care who it's against. But by the 3rd or 4th ball game, everybody's going to be talking about Talyn Taylor, period. Okay? I think another kid that's going to compliment that nobody's talking about right now. People hear about C.J. Wiley, and they know what a good player he was at Milton. We heard the Jeremy Bell talk from last year when he dunked over that kid at the summer camp, and everybody's excited about him last spring because he caught some slot fades for touchdowns, and everybody's beginning to get a little buzz about him. I think he's going to be a good compliment out there. Isaiah Canion is going to come in and contribute, probably very similar to how Kobe Young contributed, similar to maybe even, when you look at Noah Thomas maybe. I don't know. It's going to take time to adapt to the offense. I'm not sure how quickly Isaiah Canion can do that. To me, the quicker he adapts, the better he's going to be. But the people that we're not going to be talking about that we will be talking about as well as contributing and feeling really good about the wide receiver room because of the depth that we're going to get is Thomas Blackshear and Tyler Williams. Wherever those guys rotate in at, whether they're at the Z, the X, or the slot and the X, or Z and the H, okay, the positions of need in those positions when you're either in 11 personnel, okay, or possibly 10 personnel, which we very rarely run, okay. I think those guys are going to be great complements and great depth pieces to the wide receiver room as well. So don't worry about the wide receiver room this year. I think the tight ends are going to solidify what they do, and that helps complement the wide receiver room in the process. So don't worry about the wide receiver room. I think that you're going to see great things from them this year. I think it's going to be complemented by a great tight end room, and it's going to be highly reflective by week 2, week 3 in there. Thanks for the great dog info, Coach. Appreciate you being in here with me tonight, Brent Henry. And for those of you who are watching the show, can't thank you enough for taking the time out on a Friday night to watch these segments done. So as I promised, I was going to give you a little X's and O here. We're going to watch a small little tab, a little excerpt from Coach Smart talking about Sacovie White-Helton, and then we're going to get an X's and O breakdown that I did earlier today for you as well. So check it out.
I don't know that I have one particular moment with Sacovie. I mean, the joy of the game comes from watching him on special teams. He's come to me several times and requested to be more of a value, an asset on special teams. He wants to do other things besides just return the ball. He's always got a question. He's inquisitive about, like, well, what do I do if this happens? Or, Coach, well, how did you see that? Should I have done this? I mean, he very intelligent, and he loves the game, and he's just always smiling.
So I sit there and I skipped over that real quick. I wanted to go back up here to the grouping because I'm going to show you that next. Sacovie White-Helton. Everybody's talking about who's going to replace Zachariah Branch. I think Sacovie White-Helton is going to be a very nice compliment. He's already said he's not Zachariah Branch. We know he's not Zachariah Branch. But I think he's going to be highly productive in our passing game this year. He's going to be a heavy contributor to receptions, getting the ball and getting yak yards after the catch, and being a very trustworthy receiver for a receiving opponent for Gunner Stockton this year. So what I want to do here is show you a play. Most of you probably remember this play where Gunner actually throws it in zone. And I want you to watch the cerebral ability of Sacovie White-Helton and how understanding where you're at in a route progression, okay, allows you to schematically understand, hey, I can't keep running that route or I'm going to take the football right to that defender. I'm going to sit down on an option and be able to be a smart wide receiver and be on the same page. And something that seems to be very simplistic as just running a simple 4 route or the out route can become that stuff that drives you nuts as a fan because it's like you think, God, just the difference of us, connecting on that or not connecting on that could be the difference of a conversion of a first down, extending drives, things like that. But in this case scenario, they were both on the same page. And I want you to watch Sacovie White-Helton as he goes through this progression with Gunner Stockton. Check it out. What I would like to explain to you is a very simple route procedure run by your inside number 2 receiver in this formation. All right. I'm going to call this early Rick. This is my formation set because you have an early trip set with an H attached to the line of scrimmage. So that's Rick and Loose. All right. Lucy and Ricky. That's how I go with it. I go back to I Dream of Lucy days. But anyway, what I want to talk to you about is you end up having on the line of scrimmage, off the line of scrimmage, off the line of scrimmage. That's your trip set 3x1. And Pete Golden has done a really good job with this to disguise what he's looking like right now with a 2 high safety look. He's actually going to convert to a cover 3. So you're going to get a bail out. You're going to get a bail out. He's downhill. He bails out to the flat. He's rolling to the middle of the field, and he's buzzing down into the strong safety position, cover 3 to that side. So basically, you have your force flat defender on this side, your force flat defender on this side. The nickel is actually doing something special to this concept because of what we like to do out of this, which is run our flare concept. We also run the flame concept as well to the other side. It's always the safety outlet that we do in this. But the progression model out of this is what we have outside with London Humphreys and Sacovie White-Helton. I'm showing you this because this is something very easily that we could run this year, especially in zone concepts, which I know a lot of you in here have talked about the fact of, well, we don't see Gunner throw it in zone very well. Guys, this is the difference of being a good football team and a great football team. When you have a guy like Sacovie White-Helton who plays this very smart right here and a quarterback who understands where the drop zones are at so that he can hit it in the right spot. So what you're going to get is you're going to get the clear out by London Humphreys taking him deep. So he's going to clear out the cornerback. Now, what's nice about this, because of the drop, you end up getting 3 guys kind of taking the flare that we're doing here. Okay, what I call this is 94. You got the vert route. This is my route tree with a 4 route. That's going to happen. Now, what I want to show you out of this so we can put this in motion is that when it first sets up, okay, and I'm going to pause it right here. I'm going to blow the screen up here so I can show you. You can see how you've got the inside linebacker pushing to the flare. You've got the drop outside linebacker, very similar to our jack position, dropping into the flat and being a force responsibility guy. And then you got an extra nickel sitting here in space. And I would bet Pete Golden would probably like to see him deeper because that's what's going to be coming open as the 4 route right here. But I want you to understand is that this route should actually continue out here. So if you've got the clear out with London on the corner, the 4 route should be replacing right there. I call that the honey hole, especially if you don't have this guy right here to contend with. Now, this is what's smart about number 0 this year, number 18 last year. He's going to be number 0 in your hearts this year. But Sacovie White-Helton does a great job of noticing zone recognition of where that guy is at. If he keeps running on the 4 route out here, he ends up leading Gunner probably to an interception because this guy continues to see, he's watching eyes. All right. So he's not necessarily thinking, okay, I can react up to this if he does to finally decide to throw the flare with the extra blocker out here, but he's drifting. Okay. So what does Sacovie White-Helton do? Instead of actually continuing his route out on his 4, he actually settles it down. And you'll notice as he drifts, he just settles it down. That's what you want to understand when you have good zone recognition and knowing where your defenders are at and helping your quarterback out to throw the ball in the honey hole where they're not. Okay, so this is beautiful recognition. I'm going to back it up one good time here. So you can see Sacovie off of this. Sometimes we'll run some concept of a switch sail out of this. This is very similar to what we ran against Tennessee, where London Humphreys actually caught this ball, but they inverted off of this. They ended up running the same routes out of it. In this case scenario, is just your traditional, what I call a 94. So what you want to do is you want to pull your safety inside and basically freeze your free safety. Okay, if you're doing this with a cover 2 high safety look or a cover 4 look, you still want to try to keep your safety inside the hash so that you can make your break out so that your leverage is in good shape. But this is even better because they're in cover 3. He sets it down because he sees this defender off of this cut, and he makes the quarterback who's already got the ball out of his hands right now and realizes I've got to get the ball to him now. All right. Once the ball is released, he sets it down in zone. You got Sacovie White-Helton making the catch, now getting upfield and doing some positive things with the football. I want you to watch the throwing lane for Gunner Stockton from the tight copy here. See, as he looks away, see, he already knows He's wide open right now. So that's the reason why he's letting it go. But that's the communication, because a quarterback has to anticipate that window. Where do I throw the football? Do I let it go more out here? Or do I know that I've got a defender out there and he's going to set it down for me to be able to throw it, and you have a more accurate throw right there? So I think this is important, where you're on the same page with your quarterback to drift and sit down on the football and make a positive play in zone coverage. So some good things from what we saw there in that zone coverage read in Sacovie White-Helton. I think that's going to be a tandem that we're going to get a chance to watch a lot this year and get excited about, with watching number 0 catching that football instead of number 18. I got this question a while ago as we enter into our third segment for the Hunker Down section on personnel that's underestimated. I got this question. Do you think Canion leads the team in receiving touchdowns? I think Canion is going to be a utilized asset on the X side. Typically on the X side, you're looking at it similar to what like Colby Young did for us, what Noah Thomas could have done for us. We're going to see him a lot on a 50-50 balls, back shoulder fades, slants, probably the complementary dig route when you're running 4 receiver progressions, him coming across on the double dig and him being the secondary dig behind. But it also comes down to how much Isaiah Canion gets converted to the offensive tendencies. Believe it or not, it's not something you just walk in and get used to doing, because there's multi motions that you have to learn. You have to understand the process of where you're at, to hash to numbers to sideline, and where your positional directions are at. Because if you're running an outside cut corner route or a 4 route from the inside position, you got to know where your pre-snap alignment's got to be at. It's not just lining up in the same place every time and being able to say, okay, I just got to run the 4 route here. There's a lot of different things you have to understand. And just like you saw with Sacovie White-Helton's video, you can understand that with that position, 4 route is a 4 route. The 9 route clears. Sacovie should be replacing right where that 9 route clears from, but because the nickel didn't drift enough, which I'm sure Coach Golden was probably pissed off because his nickel didn't fall back into that slot, which is where he should have been at. It's still good to see, Sacovie White-Helton sitting down as an option instead of carrying out the 4 route, and him and Gunner being on the same page right there and getting that reception that converted a big play for them in the Sugar Bowl, as you may know, extending the drive there for the eventual touchdown, I think, to Zachariah Branch. As you can see here, you've made it to the third segment with me. I appreciate you being here with me tonight. Coach Hayes Hudl, again, for all of you checking me out now or you catch me later by podcast, if you do get a chance to watch it on video, there are QR codes throughout the video segments, and if you scan those, it will take you to all my social media outlets for anything that you're interested in. Obviously, leave me concerns, comments, questions, anything that you would like to talk to me about. I would be glad to check those things out. As I told you, I am a 26-year vet in the classroom, 20-year plus high school football coach. I've got nothing but time. I enjoy working with fans. I enjoy answering questions, and I love doing what I do. If you got any just general questions about what I do specifically, or just about the future of what's happening this year with the football team, I would be more than glad to discuss that with you, because I enjoy talking ball. So what is my personnel underestimated this year? My personnel underestimated this year is the defensive backs, specifically the corners, because when you say defensive backs, you're including both the safeties and the nickel and the dimes in that situation as well. I'm talking about general corners, okay? General corners. I was really worried because when you look at the top of the list, Elyiss Robinson, DeMelo Jones should have number 1, number 2 CB locked down. You've got the kid coming in from Oklahoma, Gentry Williams, who's got a lot to prove because he's been hurt and he's having to deal with injury all the time. And that's something that's been sort of his black flag per se, that you don't, you worry about, because you're sitting there thinking to yourself, do you know if he's going to be able to go out there and participate? Because he's not only having to get used to the defense, he's also having to, try to recuperate with, all the injuries that he's had, because there's a lot of work that goes into playing the DB position, the cornerback position with the University of Georgia. As much man-on techniques that they have to work with their shoulders, which I know is what he's had surgery to. I know he's got a lot to prove. Braylon Connolly is probably trial by fire right now. I know that he was getting his ass cooked the other day from a person that was watching the actual practice session that he got to go in a chance to watch. And he was on the hot mic, if you know what I mean. And when you're on the hot mic with Coach Smart, you are definitely not someone who is in the most welcoming position. Because if you're being, the one thing I would say is that if he's getting on you on the mic, at least he sees what you're doing and you can improve upon that. So it's not something you like to hear, but, obviously if he's watching you, he expects more things out of you. Jonte Gilbert is going to have to continue to get reps in that position as well. And I know that he's getting those reps out there right now. But we, again, do not have a lot of proven talent. And that's something that, we one tweaked ankle away, and all of a sudden you're experimenting with a kid who's got very little limited reps at the cornerback position, a kid that's been injured prone at Oklahoma and didn't even play the 2024 season. Okay. And then a Braylon Conley kid who's got very limited reps at USC. I'll put up there Todd Robinson, Jalen Morgan, and I even brought in some other guys. Tyreek Green, who is someone that's being highly touted right now by Coach Smart, getting a little bit of whispers because he's a universal athlete, can play both sides of the ball. We recruited him as a safety, but I was beginning to wonder why not look at him at some corner positions too. I don't know what they're going to be looking at him at, but I'm sure that he's going to be a kid that'll continue to get buzz as the offseason goes on and be another potential kid that could possibly have some good things happen. Of course, when people go out and watch him in practice, he had, I think, a couple of interceptions in one of the series that they did, but I don't know specifically if it was team or 7-on-7. But when you're making plays as a freshman out there, you obviously want to get excited about that, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be. So that's the reason why I've got him there. But I have found out through different people that Jordan Smith, highly touted kid out of Warner Robins, Georgia. I think he went to Houston County, if I'm not mistaken. So another, Houston County kid down there in the Warner Robins area. Not the same school that Rayshawn Dinkins and Isaiah Gibson and Isaiah Canion's from, but still the same county. A lot of good football being played down in that area. But I heard that Jordan Smith, who was recruited as a safety, because I said back in the earlier months, back in actual February, March, I felt like they were going to have to recruit some safeties over to play corner because they didn't have the depth at cornerback, and we were inundated with safeties. So that was the reason why I put this group up here. Todd Robinson is another kid, just an overall stud athlete, quarterback at Valdosta High School, very fast kid. I'm hoping that they figure out something with him. I wish I could see practice to see what he's actually doing, but I think he's kind of coming along at the safety cornerback position, whatever they're giving him a chance to do right now, similar to what you see Thomas Blackshear and Tyler Williams doing on the offensive side of the ball. A guy that's not talked about a lot, but going out and doing his job and going to be a contributor in special teams and hopefully be a rotator because I think he's a hell of an athlete. Jalen Morgan, another highly touted 4-star safety. I believe he was out of the Murfreesboro, Tennessee area. Zach Fort is a hit stick. I think they'll probably end up keeping him at safety. Blake Stewart, I haven't heard much about. He was a late addition, but still, nonetheless, one of those guys did actually come to fruition. In fact, they're taking safety Jordan Smith, a recruit from this year, at safety and moving him to the cornerback position. So that gives more depth to that position. And I'm telling you, watching him on film as a safety, I was very excited about his potential. So being able to see him out at cornerback, there's obviously something that Coach Dante saw in him and Coach, T-Rob came up with and said, listen, this is the guy we need to rotate out there because we see the best fit for him at the cornerback position. So I think they're underestimated. Why they're underestimated? Everybody said, we got, Elyiss Robinson, the number one DB probably in the nation. Guys, he's highly touted. There's no doubt the accolades he received last year are very much important and very well deserved. But he's got to go out there and produce again and continue that consistency of what we want to see in Elyiss Robinson. He's got to be that lockdown corner this year, okay? He knows that. We all know that. DeMello Jones, still learning. Still, right now shows the most, consistency from what we saw last year. But he played a lot of star last year. He played a lot of safety type position. Didn't necessarily play as much corner. And that's something he's got to get better at and continue to get better at. And I'm sure he's being challenged daily by these wide receivers that I've been mentioning day in and day out. And from what I understood from the scrimmage that my gentleman that I'm connected with that watched the practice said that the DBs pretty much own the wide receivers, which made him feel a little, not so good about the wide receiver core. But, every day you're going to go out there. It's just like with the quarterbacks. Right now, they know what Gunnar Stockton is QB1. You've got Ryan Puglisi and Ryan Montgomery right now trying to fight for that quarterback 2 position. And more than likely, Pugs is going to end up overtaking that over Ryan Montgomery. But that doesn't mean they're not going out and battling every day. Okay? Same thing goes. Some days the defensive backs wins the 50-50s, and some days the wide receivers win those 50-50s. I've heard just as many compliments on the wide receiver room in spring practice as I have with DBs. It's just different. Every day is a different flavor of the week. All right. And, today everybody's liking, strawberry. The next day they're going to be liking whatever it is, Rocky Road. So, the way I look at it from that perspective is let them go out there and compete. Let those competitive juices flow. Let what happens, and let those coaches at the end of the spring, as you start into the summer months, have that board where they see consistency, trust, all right, productivity, all right, execution. and they're putting those depth charts up on the board and feeling good about those people in those places. So I hope Jordan Smith can come in and contribute to the cornerback room. We know what Elyiss and DeMello can do. We got to see what Jonte Braylon, Gentry, some of these other guys, they may rotate in from the safety position. Very interested to see where they end up putting Tyreek Green in, or what he becomes consistent at as the years progress. But he's definitely somebody that you're going to see on the field as we move forward, because there's just too much buzz about him right now that you can't. And after what I heard Coach Smart say, Coach Smart will always use his presser sometimes to give his guys motivation, but he also sets you up for failure that way too, because if you start sniffing of yourself a little bit, hearing how people are talking about you, you're going to be the first one on the hot mic when you're at practice and you screw up. So there's a lot of expectations that you have, but I mean, he's right. When you play for Buford High School at the highest level competition possible, and you go out and dominate in your class state championship game, I mean, it's hard not to sit there and talk about what your productivity can be when you come up to the SEC and you play in your first year of SEC football. I mean, there's going to be growing pains with that, but also, too, you're going to see some dazzle with that as well. Guys, I thank you enough for being with me tonight. As we go to this last commercial, this segment was brought to you by Backer Equipment, gear worthy of your devotion. If you are interested in any of the equipment stuff from Backer Equipment, I do have a QR code for you on the screen to scan. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to their website. That helps promote back to me as an affiliate with their program, and then I'll catch you for closing remarks on the flip side. Thank you for being with me this evening. Your devotion for outerwear and headwear through authentic gear of the Georgia Bulldogs, bckr.com. Backer Equipment, gear worthy of your devotion. As I said earlier, I appreciate you staying for the 3 segments. I've had a lot of people in tonight. Not as many comments in the chat, but those of you who have come in, I appreciate you being with me this evening. What I wanted to let you guys know is that you see here the QR code for my website. This is CoachHayesHudl.com. This takes you to all of my outlets where you're able to look into the Patreon account. And I just want to explain to you the Patreon account. The Patreon account is where basically I centralize all of my work to. So all the breakdowns that you see, player analysis, recruit analysis, X's and O's, the ability to win free merchandise monthly. And as we get into football season, my productivity and my repertoire of stuff that I have will grow with Georgia Sports Autographs. So I'll probably end up doing about 2 giveaways a month. And I'm very consistent about that. And something that, I've always been taught to do is, like I said, I don't do anything half-assed. I'm going to basically make sure that whatever I do, I stay contributed to that until I run out of things to be able to give away. And as of right now, I don't have, I've got a very nice supply of things to give away. So I'm wanting to give away stuff. But if you scan it and you go to my website, you will notice that Patreon is one of the main hubs that I have. Not only do you have the connection to all the things that I do, but it gives you the different tier levels that you have. First off, if you're a tier 2 level member at $10 a month, that is all 22 film. That's where you see the wide copy and the tight copy, unedited, of any game that you want to see. Of any play that you want to see from the season. You're also involved with all the player recruit analysis, the giveaways and the breakdowns, the X's and O's, all the current events, including the shows that I do with Coach Hayes Hudl and Head on the Swivel with Scott Green. So that's part of the tier 2. That's $10 a month. If you don't want the all 22 film, you're just interested in all the breakdowns that I do, the X's and O's, the player recruit analysis, the recruit analysis, the giveaways. The giveaways are still part of the tier 1, which is $5 a month for the sub for that. So if you're interested in those things, you can check out my Patreon account. I've got over 150 pieces of film already broken down in my Patreon since October when I started it of 2025. So it's not even a year old yet. I'm looking to grow it through the course of this year and looking forward to just meeting all the people out there, networking with so many people who enjoy the game, who want to connect their understanding to the game a lot better. And as I do, I want to connect the fans to the fundamentals of football. So if you get a chance to either see me live tonight or whether you're watching the podcast later, I would love for you to give me, like I said, just that thumbs up and appreciation for just the show itself. That helps the algorithms out. And I'm going to continue to try to bring you quality content week in and week out. I was looking to see if there was any questions that I had over here in the chat for my hunker down. ending session here. Again, tonight, both segments, the first and the third segment, were brought to you by Georgia Sports Autographs and Backer Equipment. And then, of course, with Coach Hayes Hudl for the second segment there. So if I don't have anybody else with any questions, I would just, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I appreciate you being with me tonight. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me for this hour as we break down the current events going on with UGA spring practice. Scrimmage 2 is going to be tomorrow as we lead to G-Day that I will be at next Saturday on April the 18th. I will be part of Georgia Sports Autographs. I'll be in the Classic Center from 9:30 to 11 o'clock. So if you happen to get in there and you happen to see me roaming around, say hey to me. I'd love for you to catch me and say, hey, how are you doing? I'd love to shake your hand and tell you thank you personally. It gives me the opportunity to connect back with you. And then, of course, I'll be at the G-Day game with my wife watching those guys get after it. And I'll be watching it from a standpoint of like a scout because I want to see where that depth chart's going to be for those coaches and their coaching staff and their players. So anyway, appreciate you being with me tonight. Take care. God bless. And as always, go Dogs.